Minister. You're very welcome here this afternoon. Minister, planning is something we have had constant problems with, but one of the great examples for me is the Lewis line, and as somebody said to me the first day the Lewis opened, isn't it great they kept the old Harcourt Street line? And, you know, officials were great down throughout the years that they recognised that that might have been needed again at some stage in the future. And that brings me to the issue of Galway and the Salmonware Bridge, the footbridge that's been spoken about over to NUIG from the Wood Quay side. We are looking, and officials of yours have met with the Galway Very Light Rail Committee, and one of the issues there is that any development that takes place now should take place with a view to providing very light rail at some stage in hopefully not the not too distant future. Which brings me on to the planning for the bridge that's to go across. The Curragh bit would be the ideal route for any light rail system, or for any very light rail system coming from Ordenmore and heading to Barna. It would link up LIT or GMIT, it would link up the university, it would link up the University Hospital, Merlin Park, the whole lot. It would just make a tremendous commute across the city. So I'd be interested in your views as to whether you're willing to take something like that on board now at this stage, even though the project itself might not happen for years to come. I'm mindful of what happened in Dundrum by Dundrum Shopping Centre and the cost to the Exchequer when, for that tiny piece of road that runs up, that bypasses Dundrum. I forget how much it was at the time, but it was the most expensive piece of real estate in Europe, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Which brings me to the matter of engaging with local representatives, with the county councillors on the ground. We had a meeting here some time ago and I was discussing the bus stop in Corndulla, which was, I think it was 10 kilometres from Corndulla, and the one from, I can't remember, on the same route there was another bus stop that was 2.5 kilometres from the local population density area. And that suggests to me that planning is being done on maps rather than being done on the ground. You know, we don't have a Google car driving around to see that this would be the ideal place for bus stops and the like. The issue of judicial reviews you brought up, Minister, and I have to say, I have no difficulty with people objecting to planning on reasonable grounds, but surely to God they should be local. Surely they should be living in the area, not people who are from outside the jurisdiction and in some cases outside the country, which causes great problems. And I'm mindful of the loss of the data centre in Athenry and Galway. Now, you can argue about data centres all day long, and I would do that with you quite happily, but it was an industry that was coming to Athenry and it was lost, and it sent out bad blood. Just two other points finally. Electric vehicles, two issues on electric vehicles. We had a very interesting piece on Pat Kenny yesterday dealing with electric vehicle charging points around the country. And I think Dungarvan has one, if I'm not mistaken. And they were talking about the what do you call it, the scenic routes around the Waterford coastline, very short on charging, which means that visitors coming to the country will not be able to rent electronic cars because of the lack of charging points. But on the other side, I have a couple of people who have bought electronic cars recently, and all of them are horrified this last month with the bills they have received, the electric bills they have received. Now, maybe it's just a thing of getting used to it, but there seems to be a huge issue of electricity charges now with electric vehicles. And finally, Minister, I walked to school as a child and frequently walked home for lunch and back down to school in the afternoon, and we would love to see that happening, but we're living in a very different society now. So it's not just an issue for your department and the planning of your department, it is a societal issue that will require the policing of safe routes to school for kids. I don't know how you'll do that. It has been done in some of the continental countries where children can leave their homes and we know they will be safe the whole way to school and back. But in the current environment in this country, I think you're going to find huge resistance to children being left out on their own, even to sort of secondary school level. So these are issues that you and your department will have to confront in the near future. And again, thank you for your time being here, Minister.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to try. I will go in as best I can and down to specifics in different areas, and won't be able to cover. I have knowledge on everything because we have so many projects. But just to take Galway, I absolutely agree with you, Senator Craughwell, that cross-city, what I'd call the cross-city link project, which running from Barna through, as you said, the hospital, NUIG, over the Salmonweir Bridge and through the centre out towards Parkmore, and doing what Galway fundamentally needs is that all that population living on one side of the city and working on the other side, giving them an effective crossover point and access to college and the hospital and the city centre. The Salmonweir project is part of that. It's been funded and with this year, it's going to construction. That allows a much safer active travel, and it's right in the centre of a beautiful part of the city, and that will allow us to put in the public transport infrastructure, really high quality, on the bridge. And I absolutely, we've committed to do further research on the light rail, but the way I see it working, similar to what I think might happen in Cork and Dublin, now there are similar plans for each of those three cities, is that Limerick's different because Limerick has so much existing railway line, but for those three cities, that we build high quality bus corridors, we get the patronage up, we get the transport-led development, we get a signal, that's where you put the housing in, and because that's what, and then you can upgrade it to light rail. But you have to get the planning connected to the housing connected to the transport planning. And I think if we were to looking at accelerating, I mean, there's various projects in Galway, obviously the development of Oranmore railway station, which is funded, as my mind, and can be done by 2025. The likes of the Dublin Road, there's other key projects, but I think one of the first most urgent ones, and I think I'm encouraged by what I see happening at Galway City Council, the fact that they're looking now again at Salt Hill and willing to kind of do things that are, you know, test different ways of doing things to see, can we change the sense of place and come out of COVID by holding on to some of the public space that can be used as in a different way than what was the past. And I think that cross-city link with the view to getting a really quality bus corridor in and making a safe active travel space is the way to go. On electric vehicles, we have a real challenge, a timeline challenge here, because electric vehicles are coming at a huge scale, beyond what anyone can expect, because all the motor companies are starting to realise if they're not providing electric vehicles and if they don't have the sort of range capabilities that the cars that are now really selling out, then they'll fall behind. And we have a fortunate in terms of, and I always say for rural Ireland, electric vehicles are going to be particularly useful because there you don't have you've less of the charging complications we have in the city. In my constituency, there's a real problem where we've rows of terraced houses or apartments. How do you charge the cars in those locations? Not easy. Rural Ireland, it's much easier because one-off house in the country, the connection point is not a difficulty. So I expect and also maybe people tend to do more miles because of this more dispersed settlement model. And that's where electric cars come into their own because they are cheaper. Even with the current high electricity prices, and that, please God, will be a temporary phenomenon, but even with those, it's still a fraction of the cost of petrol and diesel. And that's before you take into account that the maintenance cost of electric vehicles is similarly a fraction of what a combustion engine vehicle is. So our department is engaged, and we've taken this responsibility from the Department of Climate and Environment, because I think it is a transport project. We're looking at a whole range of different initiatives. There is starting to be, I mean, the high-speed chargers now on the motorway stations, the motorway interchanges are starting to be really effective. From my own personal experience use of them, that kind of 50 kilowatt, they really do give you the capability of covering the country, because you can stop for half an hour, have a coffee, quick read of the paper, and your car is the guts of, you know, that'll get you to Cork, stopping halfway. We need to scale that up. I absolutely agree with you, the destination point at the end of it, it's not just Dungarvan, it's the same right around the country when you get to the end point of, I hate to call that for, you know, like Clifton or Dingle, but when you're at the end of a peninsula or at the end of a very popular tourist route, There we have a real issue, and we have to roll out a whole range of chargers. It is a market as well as the state, like the state supporting the ESB to go with some of these motorway and other stations. But there's also other providers, the likes of Ionity is one, you'd see in some of those interurban petrol stations. And I think that competition does help, because I think hotels in those locations, retail, out shopping centres, have a real opportunity to gain business if they have good infrastructure. The challenge is on the distribution grid. You need a strong grid to be able to power it. That's not always easy or popular to build grids. And the people in Waterford know that that's been a contentious issue in recent years. But without the grid, we need the grid, and we're absolutely aware of that challenge of getting all those charging points in place, because the cars are coming.
On the charging points at hotels and the like, I mean, tourism is a major industry in this country, and I think maybe you might look at grant aiding through some scheme in the country to ensure that particularly hotels in places like Clifton, Dingle, Dungarvan, West Cork, that they have the wherewithal to put in charging points now, because I do think that it would be a huge advantage to the use of electronic vehicles through the rental scheme, car rental for tourists and the like. So I wonder, would you look at that? So thank you.